Hello everyone, thank you for watching this presentation about what's new for .NET developers during this Tech Week. My name is Glauber Torres and I am a .NET developer here at LCI Education. I have been using the Microsoft stack since the mid-90s, and since then I have been also pursuing some Microsoft certifications. Other than that, I am also a passionate indie game developer. Before getting started, I just wanted to express my gratitude to innovators in technology for this opportunity for this presentation. I am really excited to speak a little bit about some new tools and features we have at our disposal today, starting with Visual Studio 2022, and we're gonna see also .NET Hot Reload, C# 10, .NET 6, and .NET MAUI. So let's get straight into it. And speaking of Visual Studio 2022, the first thing that literally pops up in front of your eyes is the fact that the executable responsible for Visual Studio is finally a 64-bit binary, which is simply amazing. When you're gonna work with huge projects, you're gonna have a better experience for sure. And here in my machine, I have two instances opened of Visual Studio. The first is Visual Studio 2019, and I have also another instance of 2022 running. We can see here right away, this is a 64-bit binary, but I just wanted to show you here in my task manager. I have the process for the 2019 and also for 2022 running here. I'm gonna right click here my Visual Studio for the 2019, and I'm gonna hit go to details, and here I can see that this is a 32-bit binary. And going back to my other instance, which is the preview one for the 2022, if we right click here and go to details, we can double check this is a 64 executable running here in my machine. And also, according to Microsoft, the feature to finding files is way much better now, up to 3 times faster, which is gonna improve your experience for sure when you're gonna work with big projects for sure. Now, I just wanted to show you a demonstration about this new feature for code completion. So let's see here. So let's get back to Visual Studio. I'm gonna get rid of this about window, and I'm gonna create a new project. It's gonna be a console application, and let's name it as code completion. Make sure we're gonna use .NET 6, and I'm gonna hit create. The first thing we're gonna notice, we don't have in this template for console application the main entry point, the main method, but don't worry, we're gonna discuss about that shortly. Now I'm gonna create a new class, and it's gonna be my student class. And for this student class, notice that I'm gonna hit here enter, and the code completion is starting working. It's suggesting me this ID property. I'm gonna hit tab and enter, and it's going to suggest now the name property, which is really cool. I can accept that. I'm gonna create on my own a public string email, so I can at least have something that I did by myself. And other than that, I'm gonna create a method to override the toString method. So here I'm gonna, instead of accepting the base to string, I'm gonna interpolate the values of ID, name, and email. Okay. Back to our program CS. I'm gonna here, after our hello world, I'm gonna create a new instance of my student object, and I'm gonna call it like my student equals new student. And notice it is suggesting me right away to populate the name. I can accept that. Or even better, I'm gonna use ID instead. And for ID, it's going to be, look, I didn't hit 1. I didn't type this value, but it's already suggesting me, which is really cool. I'm gonna hit tab, and notice now it's suggesting again the name. I'm gonna populate with my own name, and it's detecting by itself the properties of my class. And all I have to do is just to accept the suggestion or do something else. In this case, I'm gonna hit tab to accept, and I'm gonna create some email. And I don't want to create a new object. I'm gonna hit enter again. And notice that I just wrote console, and it's trying to guess that I'm gonna want to use the writeLine method, which is true. That's what I really want to do now. And like a magic trick, it's trying to guess I'm trying to use my object, and that's true. The guess is right. I'm gonna hit tab, and yeah, I want to do also, before proceeding, I'm gonna just fix here my namespace to use the namespace of my class. Okay, and I'm gonna create here some variables to save the content of this class inside a text file. Watch me, this is going to be really cool. So I'm gonna create this file path variable, and I'm gonna hold the value of some path in my computer. I have this folder already created, and I'm gonna name the file as mystudent.txt. I'm gonna create also a variable called file content, and it's going to hold the content of my variable using the toString method. Okay, now look at that. This is going to be really cool. I'm gonna use the method file write all text, and look at here. It's trying to suggesting me to use the path and the content. And the reason this engine is so smart is because there is an artificial intelligence running behind Visual Studio, trying to make those really smart suggestions for you. And in this case, since this is really good, I'm just going to hit tab, and that's pretty much it. I'm gonna run my project, and I have my hello world. I have my output of my override of the toString method, and let's see here in my C folder, int demo, I have my text file, and voila, the content of my object is here. I really invite you to try this new feature, which is really cool, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna love it. Another feature I would like to show now is called .NET Hot Reload, and let's get back to our console application. I'm gonna copy and paste this code I have already done. It's just an infinite loop which is going to output this string, and it's going to delay the execution by 1 second. Let's run and see what happens. So basically you can see we are having this output every second. I'm gonna dock the console window over here, and I'm gonna adjust a little bit the width of my window, and look at this fireball icon. It is the hot reload feature. By default, we have this option to apply the hot reload on file save, and here I can, for example, change hello1 by hello2, and I'm gonna save, and look at here. The application is still running, it doesn't lose the state, and this is a really interesting feature because you can, for example, change the code of your application, and it's going to help you in your debugging process. It's not only available to console applications. You can apply this hot reload feature to other ones, other kind of projects. Here I'm gonna create, for example, a Blazor server app, and I'm gonna accept the defaults. And this is kind like a web application. I'm gonna run here, and let's see what we have. So basically we have this page with the hello world by default, and we have another page with a counter here. So if I go to my Solution Explorer, I can check the pages I already have. I'm gonna open the index razor page, and I'm gonna dock my window over here, and instead of hello world, I'm gonna output hello int, and I'm gonna save. And here we can see the page has been reloaded automatically. I didn't have to stop the execution and start running again. And the same applies for C# code. For example, here we have this counter. I'm gonna go back here in my Solution Explorer, and in the counter page we have this increment of this variable. I'm gonna increase, instead of incrementing by 1, I'm gonna increment by 10. I'm gonna save, and it should be running fine. Just double check. Here we have the hot reload, and the hot reload of file save is enabled. So if we click here, it's incrementing by 10. Again, hot reload, a very cool feature, available now in .NET 6. Now let's move on and let's take a look on new C#10 features. Of course, there's not gonna be enough time to cover everything, but I would like to highlight these new features related to namespace usage, and finally the new console template you just noticed in my previous example. So let's go back to Visual Studio. I'm gonna bring back my console application, and let's go and check our student class again. First, I'm gonna get rid of these usings, and let me ask you a question. Have you ever noticed, usually in C# files, in C# classes, usually we have this structure. First, we have the namespace and then the class. The reason for that basically is because we can have, it's not wrong, we can have multiple namespaces inside the same file, but honestly this is not something so usual, and in order to make the code look better, Microsoft came up with a very clever syntax for C#10 related to namespace usage. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna cut this block of code, I'm gonna get rid of these brackets, and I'm gonna paste my code again, and voila, it's basically the same thing, but look how cleaner the code looks here. And if I go back to my program.cs, we can see there nothing has broken and it's running just fine. So basically this is the file scoped namespace feature in a nutshell. Let's take a look also on the global using statements, which is another feature related to namespace. Let's go back here, and what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create a class called file repository. I have already done some code and I'm gonna paste over here, and take a look on the namespace. This is a different namespace called data. I have done that on purpose. And the basic idea here is to do the same, to save the text file of my student. And let's do that. Let's use this class in the console application. First, I have to make my namespace visible to my console application here. And I'm gonna get rid of those lines of code. I don't need them anymore. And let's call the save student feature. And we don't need this line also. Okay. So basically we have to use two using statements, and these new global using statements makes me it makes possible to create here like a container of a group of namespaces. So to demonstrate this feature, I'm gonna create a new class and I'm gonna name it like global usings. And I'm gonna delete everything, and I'm gonna here copy those two usings. I'm gonna paste here, and before the using keyword I'm gonna write global for both namespaces. In the moment I have defined those two namespaces as global, I don't need to specify anymore those namespaces when I'm gonna use. They are pretty much visible everywhere. So this is a way to make your namespaces more organized and cleaner. And also, as part of this housekeeping process to make your code look cleaner and better, the new console template is basically the reason you don't see the main method here for the program.cs file anymore. If you want to know more about that, you can take a look on this link as part of the template to check the documentation. Don't worry, the previous method works just fine. And what I'm gonna do, just out of curiosity, I'm gonna paste the code, this code as an example, and execute, and it runs just fine. Last but not least, I'd like to introduce .NET MAUI, which is the new project type where we can have a single code base, and we can deploy to multiple platforms such as iOS, Android, macOS, and Windows. So if you want to test this new project type, make sure when you're gonna install Visual Studio under mobile development with .NET, you turn on this checkbox .NET MAUI. Also, under Windows settings, make sure you turn on the developer mode. Let's take a look on a demo of .NET MAUI. So let's go back to Visual Studio, and I'm gonna create a new project, and I'm gonna stick with .NET MAUI app. Let's accept the default values for a new project. And since this is still in preview, we don't have access to developing right away Windows applications. There is an workaround. Here you have to right click the project, and we have to edit the project file, and we just have to uncomment this line. But maybe if you watch this video in the future, there's not gonna be the need for this workaround. So this is the structure for the MAUI app. In this platforms folder, we can see all the different operational systems it's supporting. For each one, we have specific files we can create for specific platforms, and for the common part, we can program outside those folders. I'm gonna just run the application but before, I'm gonna select here the platform I want. So I'm gonna start with Windows, and I'm gonna click Start here. It's gonna take a little while to compile the application. Let's wait a little bit, and there you go. Here it is. This is a Windows application running in my machine. So far so good. Now, since I'm running here in my machine Windows 11, I was just curious to know if I could be able to integrate a .NET MAUI application with this new Windows subsystem for Android, which makes my Windows operational system capable of running Windows Android applications in a native mode. So here under Windows Subsystem for Android settings, notice we have the IP address for my native device. I'm gonna copy this IP address, and here in Visual Studio under Tools, Android ADB command prompt. Let's see if we can connect to this device by typing the command ADB connect, the IP address, and there you go. We were able to establish the connection. And also notice Visual Studio automatically switched my project to the device, the Android device I just connected. Just to make sure, we can check here under framework. We have selected now .NET 6 Android. So let's run the application. Again, it's gonna take a little while to load, and here there is our Android application running pretty much the same way as we did for the Windows application, the same code base, which is really cool. I really encourage you to test this new project type for creating cross-platform applications, .NET MAUI. That's pretty much it for this presentation. I hope you are excited as I am about those new tools, platforms, and features for .NET developers. Keep coding, stay safe, And thank you very much for watching. Have a nice day. Bye bye.